Welcome to AMOI Unplugged, exploring diversity. Hi, I'm Chioma, and I'm right here at the headquarters of the Oil and Gas Free Zone Authority. In the next few minutes, we're going to be sitting down with UMANA Okon UMANA, and he's the CEO, he's the regulator, and he coordinates Nigeria's Oil and Gas Free Zone Authority. And more importantly, how he's contributing into diversifying Nigeria's economy. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit with us and talk about the oil and gas free zone. So welcome to AMOI Unplugged.
Thank you.
Right off the bat, I want to ask you, what exactly is the free zone model? What is the concept?
Well, you see, the free zone, by definition, if I have to put it in a very simple way, is a geographical space that is demarcated by law, where laws that operate outside the free zone, and technically we would say laws that operate in the customs territory, are suspended. For example, if companies have to pay taxes outside the free zone, the laws governing taxation are suspended in the free zone. And the whole essence of demarcating some territories within the country area is to provide an enabling environment to drive the economy in terms of attracting foreign direct investments. Especially in many developing countries, even in developed countries, if you want to have a competitive edge to attract foreign direct investments, because it's a global arena, and only countries that can be competitive will be able to attract foreign direct investments. So if the state of infrastructure countrywide is below standards, you can demarcate an area and make sure you provide world-class infrastructure and you provide excellent incentives in terms of tax rebates and of course the speed of doing business, getting approvals for customs, for immigrations, and so on. So that demarcated space, which is created by law, is what we call a free zone. And the whole purpose is to attract foreign direct investments and by extension drive economic growth and development.
So you're very critical to the economy in terms of diversifying the economy for the president.
Yes, I would say so, especially because our zones are sector specific. We focus on oil and gas, and that specificity and specialization clearly would mean that our sister agency should also focus on non-hydrocarbons, and that sits well with the economic agenda of economic diversification of the federal government of Nigeria, yes.
Now, as the managing director and the CEO, what is your vision and mandate?
Yes, our vision really is to be the premier agency of governments regulating and managing oil and gas free zones with the main objective of attracting foreign direct investments. And of course, in doing that, we deploy a number of strategies, including the private-public partnership model. And I must say that our flagship free zone, the oil and gas free zone in Rivers State, which commenced operations in 2000, but was established based on the Act number 8 of 1996.
Okay.
Is based on that PPP model, and it has worked well, and that example is now being replicated as other free zones
by other countries.
Not only other countries, but in other areas in Nigeria. Yes, by other countries too. So, so we're also having other free zones that focus on oil and gas specialized economic zones. So I must say that the whole idea of having these special economic zones dealing with oil and gas has paid off
tremendously,
handsomely. Yes,
for Nigeria.
For Nigeria, in terms of the employment created, the statistics will bear me out. From inception, close to 200,000 direct and indirect jobs have been created.
Wow.
In our oil and gas free zones. Over $15 billion of investments have also been attracted to oil and gas free zones. Let me, because I'm just trying to reel out some of the statistics.
Sure.
And I must also say that on the oil and gas free zones, at some point before we experienced the last recession, attracted over 200 companies from 45 countries.
That's impressive.
So you can also see the international dimension, very strong international presence in our zones. Yeah.
Walk me through what you inherited when you first came in.
Well, when I took over, naturally I had to do a stock taking to see where we were and what the potentials were. And to do all of that, I organized a management retreat.
Okay.
It was the very first thing I had to do. And from that management retreat, we produced a roadmap with 6 goals, redefined our vision and our mission, and made it also very clear that beyond attracting investments and providing the enabling environments, we also had to play a role effectively as the regulator of the oil and gas free zones, and ensuring that we provide a level playing field for all of the operators in the industry. So that roadmap clearly set out our vision.
What were the 6 goals?
6 goals. First, to create an enabling environment. And of course, to do that, we had to look at issues such as the legal framework, the adequacy of our law, and which, from my assessments and the brief I got, it was clear that the law which was put in place over 20 years ago, we had to tinker with the law. So the National Assembly, of course, is still working on amending the law. One other goal, of course, had to do with improving operational efficiency. And to do that, we took a number of steps, reviewed existing procedures,
okay,
and then reduced timelines for service delivery. For example, in the past, it would take 28 days
okay,
to process and issue a license. We reduced that to 14 days. It would take in the past 14 days to renew a license. We reduced that to 3 days.
How difficult was that?
And then we also made a commitment to our clients that for operational requests to process cargoes and so on and so forth, it would take a maximum of 48 hours. We have kept to these commitments. There are issues of infrastructure, issues of security, and of course, we will be taking action to ensure that those issues are dealt with. For example, the access route into the free zone and into the ports at some point was impassable. We had to take action, and I'm happy to report that the road is now in a much better state. So because at some point trucks were falling all over the place. And for me, it just didn't make sense to talk about attracting investors if
The minimum
the
infrastructure.
access into even the free zone or the ports it simply wasn't there. But we've dealt with that, and then of course issues of security, piracy. We also dealt with that, and
How has the piracy been?
the incidents
Because
of piracy they've been reduced to virtually zero level because we have a safe security corridor, so vessels really have no issues today. So outside creating the enabling environments, which is our goal number one, we also looked at how to grow investments and investors into the zones, and we gave ourselves a 50% increase
okay.
on what I made on ground over 3 years.
What did you meet on ground? Were the books good? Was the did you find that it was a bubbling agency, or did you have to go back? What did you find on ground?
Well, first and foremost, I found out that the agency really had no presence, even in Nigeria, because if you're going to attract investments, then the investors
Should know about
must
it.
know what you have.
Yes.
So that was why we also took proactive steps to update our websites
Okay.
to ensure that
Sensitization.
we took it up to globally acceptable standards. Then we also produced a brochure, a standard brochure with all the information required that investors could access. And in that brochure, we also stated our service charter, what we commit to.
So tell me about what is the one-stop shop concept?
Well, before I answer that, you asked me about our goals. And,
Yes.
And I mentioned
The enabling.
enabling environments, growing investors and investments, then improving operational efficiency, then effective communication, because that is also key. If you don't communicate to existing clients, potential clients, then there's no way you can be effective. And then one of the other key goals you're going to find in our roadmap is the goal of financial independence.
Yes.
So that is also there. Then going back to this question about one-stop shop, the whole idea is that within the free zone, all problems can be solved. The investor will not have to look outside, will not go anywhere, because we have a full customs office within the free zone, so he doesn't have to go outside for customs approval.
Everything is within one
shop. We have a
shop.
full immigration office within the free zone, so he doesn't need to go out. So all the agencies that are relevant to providing services for the investors, all those agencies are located within the free zone, and we all work in harmony, and of course they're all coordinated by law, they're all coordinated by the authority.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the goals. You mentioned about financial independence.
Yes.
How did that happen, and how long did it take you to establish that? I want you to walk me through.
Well, financial independence for me is not something that is static. I believe it is more of a journey than a destination. Saying, "Oh, yeah, I started today, I'm there," because so it's dynamic. What we did was to again look at our sources of revenues and to see how we could step up in terms of the exploitation of those sources, and what other new sources we could also exploit. And of course, for the new sources, that is also one reason why we need the amendment in our acts, so that we can have dedicated sources of revenues to effectively deliver on our mandates.
So it was within the act.
Because funding is key. But from the review that we did, we're able to increase our revenue base after 1 year by over 70-80%. And because of that accomplishment, in the 2018 budget, we wrote to the Honorable Minister to say that we'll be responsible for our recurrent expenditure and that it will no longer be necessary for our recurrent expenditure needs to be met with federal appropriation. So we opted out of treasury funding for our recurrent expenditure needs.
That was historic.
It was audacious. It was a very bold move.
Were they stunned?
Because, yes, and since January we've been able, we've been meeting our needs. And you see, we also had to do that to challenge our workers so that they could see the authority as a business concern. They could be more professional and understand that they would understand that they have to be creative, they have to work
innovative,
hard to generate the revenues to meet their recurrent needs. Because the former arrangements of just waiting and knowing that whether you work or not, the federal government of Nigeria would provide money for your salaries.
One of the key things that I also was impressed about was the cutting edge technology. Tell me about how you're using technology in the application of the ease of doing business for your.
Now you see, our goal on creating an enabling environment and also our goal on improving operational efficiency. There's no way we can achieve all of those goals unless we meet global best practices. And that is why I also had to take the bold step of ensuring that all of our processes would be automated in line with global best practice. And sometime this year, I think it was in the second quarter of this year, I signed an agreement with Oracle, and we then went ahead to deploy their most up-to-date software application in managing the operations in our free zone. So all of our processes are now automated, and because it's a process,
yes,
our workers are also being trained, and it's being done in phases. So by the end of this year, we will be at 100% level, and I must say that this is helping position our free zones and ensuring that they're globally competitive.
Every sector, it's remarkable that you've done so well in such a short time. But can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced in the last 3 years and how you're dealing with those challenges, if there's any?
Of course, there are challenges. Challenges of finance. We're working on that, work in progress. That's why we need the amendment of our principal acts. Challenges of infrastructure. I told you about the problem of the access roads. Then other issues like power in the zone, which will help bring down the cost of doing business. Again, we've been proactive. We have now engaged an investor who would provide embedded power in the zone in Une. We're expecting that the groundbreaking should be taking place in a number of weeks, maybe in the next 3-4 weeks.
Wow.
And then there's also the challenge of a legal framework. I alluded to that earlier on. And because of the lacunas in our law, created all kinds of ambiguities which led to conflicts with other agencies of government. So that has been a source of distraction, but because the amendments process is on and is ongoing, we are hopeful that that will be dealt with.
One of the things you alluded to is one of the attractiveness of a free zone is labor, employment, indigenous employment. And I want to ask you a question. How are you working with the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board in increasing Nigerians' local labor force in the oil and gas free zones?
Well, for us, I think it's a natural fallout of the outcomes in the free zones, because I must say that as we speak today, 90% of the workers in the free zone are Nigerians.
90%?
Yes, and this runs through up to management levels. And we have very serious multinational companies represented in our free zones, FMC, Tenaris, the IOCs, big companies. So when we talk about benefits in terms of employment, benefits in terms of transfer of skills and technology, it is not academic, it is real. Yeah.
You recently attended the World Free Zone Convention in Doha, Qatar, and you were one of the few people that made a presentation. Can you share some of the highlights of that convention with us?
Yes, thank you very much. It was a good opportunity, a good platform to also tell the Nigerian story, to let the world know about the opportunities that exist in our free zones, the opportunities that exist for investments, even outside our free zones, in power, roads, railway, aviation, and so on and so forth, agriculture. So we presented that package to the world, and we also made it clear that the negative perception about Nigeria is not founded, certainly not founded, especially against the background of the ongoing reforms by the President Muhammadu Buhari administration. Reforms in the area of anti-corruption, reforms in the area of promoting the ease of doing business, and massive investments in infrastructure, roads, railway, agriculture, and so on and so on. So our key message was, look, the story about Nigeria is changing. So forget about all of these stories that Nigeria is not attractive for investments, that the story is changing, and that Nigeria is a good investment destination. So that was my key message, yeah.
What is your message for an investor that they want to come to Nigeria? They've heard that we have the largest market. They're ripe, but you know, what message do you have for that person that is sitting there, but they can't make that decision? What is the one thing you want to tell them?
Well, you see, investors are rational.
Yes.
And the fact that we can have investors from 45 countries, that is a story
already
itself. And any investor who is looking at other locations will take comfort from the fact that, look, this free zone in Nigeria, where you have virtually all the key players in the world who are already there, it means they have something to offer. And of course,
there's something happening.
Nigeria has something to offer. You mentioned market, huge population, workforce. So
and a teeming youth.
Of course, and amazing opportunities in every area, not just in the area of hydrocarbons, agriculture, manufacturing, SMEs. The opportunities are amazing. So Nigeria is an investment destination any day.
That's a great place to stop. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for educating me about tree zones. Thank you.